At first glance, Love Alarm is a formulaic by the numbers romance, one that adopts all the usual tropes of this genre, under the guise of its interesting dating app premise. Despite a slow start, Love Alarm settles into a consistent rhythm as it starts exploring its central cast of characters, asking some pretty profound questions about the benefits and drawbacks of our digitalized age, whilst continuing to develop a couple of interwoven love triangles into the fold. All of this builds toward the finale, where JoJo's conflict reaches its climax and leaves things wide open going forward. At the heart of all this drama is an interesting dating app called Love Alarm, which notifies you when someone nearby loves you. With Korea all but gripped in the sensation of receiving these little notifications, at the center of this is Kim JoJo, a girl indifferent to the entire dating phenomenon. Happy with her boyfriend ill sick, when new boy Suno arrives at school and the two hit it off, what ensues is a messy melodrama as Suno and JoJo grow closer together. Complicating matters are JoJo's jealous cousin Gulmi, and Suno's best friend Hae Young, the latter happening to have a serious crush on JoJo. This ultimately sets the foundation for what follows, as we learn more about JoJo's past over the episodes, along with finding out just why Suno is so protective, why Gulmi despises her cousin So, and more about Hae Young's affection toward JoJo. It's all pretty standard romantic fare, and at the heart of it, Love Alarm doesn't really do very much different compared to other romance dramas. Make no mistake about it, Love Alarm is pure romantic territory, and if I'm honest, Suno's flawed protective character makes him a difficult protagonist to warm to early on alongside Kim JoJo. Love Alarm is a series you really need to persevere with to get to the good stuff. After watching the first episode, you'd be forgiven for thinking this is a straightforward love triangle story, and while the latter is true, the story is far from straightforward. From a murder in a park nearby, courtesy of an issue stemming from the app, to gay rights, privacy concerns and suicide, Love Alarm isn't all sunshine and rainbows, exploring some pretty dark places across its episodes in a surprisingly mature and thought-provoking way. The back half of this Korean drama in particular really hammers this home, and there's some pretty shocking moments here that definitely caught me off guard. Aesthetically, Love Alarm looks great and adopts all the usual tropes you'd expect from a show like this. The OST, original soundtrack, is admittedly lackluster, especially next to Korean dramas like Hotel Del Luna, but some of the visual cues, including twinkling indicators and subtle color changes, are nicely implemented, and certainly add a fantastical element to the series. It's not perfect and it certainly doesn't reinvent the wheel, but Love Alarm makes for an enjoyable and surprisingly thought-provoking romantic drama nonetheless. Questions around the dangers of digitalized love, privacy and equality spring up a lot here, and in the setting of dog-eat-dog high school society, add an extra dimension to the series. The characters aren't all likable, but their backstories are explored in enough detail through the episodes to learn more about them, as the series reaches its climactic third act. It takes a while to warm up, but when it does, Love Alarm presents a warm, fuzzy romance with just enough of a bite to rise above mediocrity. I just wish it bit a little harder with some of its ideas. Let's start the episode 1 recap. When it comes to romantic dramas, love triangles are a staple of this genre, and have been for as long as I can remember. Capitalizing on this age-old tradition, new Korean drama Love Alarm mixes romance with the arrival of a phone app called Love Alarm, changing the way high school students' attitude toward romance. We begin the first episode 15-30 days since Love Alarm was launched. As a large heart fills the cloudless sky, Kim JoJo receives a notification on her phone that someone within 10 meters loves her. Across the street is Suno, and as Christmas cheer grips the streets, we cut back in time 4 years, a week before Love Alarm is launched. After saying goodbye to her friends, high school student Kim heads home while Hwang Suno returns from abroad, intent on spending time with his friend Lee Hae-young, but finds himself disappointed when he avoids his calls, instead pursuing his love interest on the way home from work. Suno follows from afar, eventually confronting his friend over his actions before they head inside together. With the Love Alarm app in full swing, Suno arrives at school and finds his phone going crazy, as plenty of girls take a fancy to him. However, he ignores most of the notifications and instead locks eyes with Kim JoJo on the stairs. As time appears to stop, the two stare each other down, but as Kim doesn't have the app, Suno becomes more interested in her, given he doesn't receive an alarm on his phone. As K-pop oozes into the speakers, a large heart appears in the clouds, sending the school into rapturous chaos as phones blink with notifications, and the Love Alarm app officially launches. It's a pretty impressive promotional tactic, and one that appears to work well here on everyone. except Kim Jojo, who reacts indifferently to the entire concept, especially given she already has a boyfriend in Il-sik. Nervous, Sun-oh convinces Hae-young to follow Kim due to his obvious affection for her, where he learns more about the reserved girl and sees she has a boyfriend, immediately ending his pursuit of her. Bogged down with work, Kim blows off her boyfriend, Jang Il-sik's invitation to go and grab something to eat until she's spotted hiding out in the bushes, leading to an awkward fight to ensue between them. Ever the romantic, Sun-oh stalks Kim Jojo for the rest of the day, watching from afar as he finds her at the makeup counter at the cosmetics store and the bus stop. He tells her he doesn't want to go home and asks her about Love Alarm, telling her she's being ridiculous as his app isn't receiving any notifications. She tells him not to follow her unless he's interested, so he continues to walk toward her, eventually leading her into a quiet alleyway, where he tells her he has something to say. Alone, they talk about Jojo's strained upbringing, and they both open up to one another. She tells him she doesn't have parents, and he attempts to kiss her instead, which she initially rejects, asking if he even listened to anything she said. He replies he wasn't, and eventually the two do eventually kiss. As an opening episode, Love Alarm does well to check all the boxes in the romance genre, but does little to really differentiate itself from other titles out there. The Love Alarm app is a timely and interesting concept, bringing up questions around love and whether digital apps influences our choices, offering some promising ideas to, hopefully, be explored in the future. Right now though, Love Alarm gets off to an okay start, setting the foundation for the series to come, without ever deviating from the tried and tested script of other romantic dramas. Episode 2 of Love Alarm begins in the aftermath of Kim Jojo's kiss, with Sun-oh telling her he used to be a model, before they hurry off together, attempting to escape from the pouring rain. Taking refuge under bus shelter, Jojo makes it back to work when the rain subsides, confronted by her boss who berates her for her lateness. It's here we learn that she's been in debt for 11 years, and only paid off half of what she owes. We then cut back to Hae-young, who can't quite pluck up the courage to tell Jojo how he feels and loses his opportunity, instead reduced to drinking a Coke outside. As Sun-oh heads home, he talks to his friend about their meeting and reveals to him that he kissed Jojo. Hae-young says nothing, visibly heartbroken, before eventually choking out a request for his friend to get changed out of his wet clothes. Still thinking over the kiss and consumed by guilt, Jojo struggles to fall asleep, instead rereading messages from Il-sik as he tries to win back her affection. The next day at school, Il-sik's phone goes off, prompting him to thank Jojo for her notification, despite it not being her that set this off in the first place. Meanwhile, Jojo's cousin Gulmi spies Sun-oh, and immediately believes he's the one who rang her alarm at school, disgusted when she learns it's actually Dukgu, the boy who everyone dislikes. Despite visibly seeing she doesn't like him, Dukgu is persistent, sending her a message and telling her he'll wait at a park nearby to express how he feels. Ironically, it's the same park where Jojo asks Il-sik to meet him. With Dukgu and Jojo sat on adjacent benches, he admits to Jojo how he feels about her cousin and eventually breaks down crying. After comforting him, we cut back to the school, where Il-sik confronts Sun-oh over pictures of him kissing Jojo. As a fight breaks out, Hae-young hurries upstairs and breaks it up. Unfortunately, our karate fighter is too strong, and as the two nurse their wounds in the aftermath of the fight, they discuss their feelings for Jojo. As the screen splits in half, both Kim Jojo and Hae-young download Love Alarm and have their hearts synced up to the app. After watching a video of the classroom fight, she heads back to Il-sik, who asks her to ring his Love Alarm again, a sign to show she still loves him. She shakes her head, admitting it wasn't her who rung the alarm earlier, and is unable to carry out that request. Angry at her son's classroom brawl, Sun-oh's mom tells him to clean himself up before an upcoming photo shoot, while Hae-young covers for Jojo at the restaurant, subsequently causing her love alarm to ring. Back home, Gulmi finds the phone Dukgu gave her, and immediately comments on Jojo's audacity of bringing something from him in the house. It's a brutal assessment of her character and one that truly shows Gulmi's colors, while Jojo contemplates her feelings for Sun-oh. Back at school, Gulmi snaps after finding out about Jojo's kiss, lamenting her cousin for taking everything from her, before telling Jojo to admit to everyone what happened at Jeju Island. She tells her cousin she's a monster if she brings it up, before they grab one another and fight in the hallway. In the aftermath of their brawl, Sun-oh appears and offers his hand to her. Silently, they walk off together down the hallway with multiple relationships left hanging in the balance. Episode 3 of Love Alarm begins with Sun-oh telling Jojo he didn't send the pictures, just as Hae-young arrives at the scene. He sees firsthand Suno's phone blink on with a notification, prompting him to rush out the room, with Suno chasing after him. Interestingly, outside Hae-young comes across a group of bullies beating up a boy who happens to be attracted to them, one of the downfalls with this digital app. Hae-young takes the boy under his wing, who bitterly laments his own sexuality, before Hae-young tells him he can't change who he falls in love with. Meanwhile, Kim runs into problems of her own with best friend Django, whom she confronts over her disrespect for Il-sik and lying about the academy. As home truths are revealed, Kim attempts to meet up with her after school to clear the air, but she's nowhere to be seen. Later that evening, Kim finishes work where relentless Suno follows her home, telling her to turn on the love alarm. As they sync their phones together, the notification alerts them both that they're found love together. From here we then see more of Hae-young and Suno's history together, along with Suno's tumultuous upbringing. Jojo is given an ultimatum by Gulmi, telling her to break up with Suno as she liked him first. Adding more controversy and thought-provoking themes to the fold, our characters are rocked by a death in a nearby park, linked to the Love Alarm app. This throws up some interesting questions around the moral impact of Love Alarm, before returning to the teenage melodrama at hand. Suno tells Jojo not to talk about boy bands or other boys, exhibiting some pretty toxic ideals this early in their relationship, which certainly should ring some alarm bells with Kim, but instead, they grow closer together. After falling off his bike, Hae-young heads up to the bathroom at school, and, in a strange twist of fate, it turns out the bully is the one in love. In love with Hae-young. As he tells him he doesn't lament his feelings and expresses that he's okay with it, Hae-young runs into problems of his own, as Jojo walks past the nurse's office, and sees her love alarm go off. As Suno approaches, she receives 2 notifications, and realizes that Suno and Hae-young are both in love with her. As more of the love triangle becomes apparent and interesting questions are brought into the fold, Episode 3 of Love Alarm does well to add some dimension to our characters, whilst providing enough thought-provoking questions to chew over regarding the different ideas with the app. It's certainly not all smooth sailing, and the show does a great job painting all these moral gray areas that other dramas may have otherwise avoided. As we approach the halfway point, the show is left wide open for where it's likely to go next, but for now, there's enough questions remained unanswered to keep you coming back for more. Episode 4 of Love Alarm sees Suno arrive at the nurse's office, just as Hae-young hides Jojo behind the screen. He casts one last knowing glance her way, before leaving with Suno. After some time together, Suno catches up with Jojo, asking her about visiting Jeju Island, which throws up some flashbacks to the past. Suno tells her she doesn't need to go to work, and instead takes her out skating on a date, while Hae-young heads home and reminisces over old times. With Jojo seemingly happy with Suno, and his secret out about his crush on her, Hae-young heads to the tranquil twilight of a Korean bridge and deletes the app. At school the next day, Suno causes a scene at the cafeteria as everyone watches him, and Jojo share their food together. As he gets closer to her, he begins to obsess over her eating schedule, their toxic relationship continuing as Jojo tells him to sit away from her but he refuses. Realizing this leads into his controlling mother and home life, Ducko takes an interest in Jojo's reading, before telling her that she and Suno make a good couple together. As rumors continue to circulate around school, Suno confronts Gulmi, given she happens to be the instigator for these fake slices of drama. She tells him to ditch Jojo, and instead go out with her, but Suno bites back, telling her she's only interested because he's famous and has contacts. He then offers her an ultimatum, in exchange for leaving him and Jojo alone, but she storms off without giving an answer as she notices Jojo staring from afar. Back at school, Il-sik finds out that it's Django who rung his love alarm, sending him into an angry spiral as his oldest friend looks at him romantically. As tears run down her face, we cut to Suno who holds his tears back as he's forced to keep up a facade in front of his mother. In a flashback, we see some of the questionable abuse he was confronted with, courtesy of his mother. As he rushes over to Jojo's for comfort, she and Gulmi have a fight over the past, where her aunt rushes in and calls Jojo two-faced, lamenting the debts left to her. Desperate for familial love, her aunt tells Jojo to get out of her house. As she walks, teary-eyed, down the twilight-lit bridge, and into the streets. It's here we see her flashbacks before Suno fades into view. Perhaps they're both destined for each other after all. As we officially reach the halfway point of this Korean romance, more light is shed on Jojo and Suno's past, both of which full of pain and suffering. Perhaps this is why the two of them have been drawn together in such a way, and certainly throws some interesting questions into the fold. While the episode doesn't advance the plot a whole lot, there's enough here to make for an enjoyable watch nonetheless, one that offers some much needed perspective on the tumultuous drama surrounding these two lovers. In the midst of grief, episode 5 of Love Alarm sees Sunho come to the rescue and saves Kim Jojo from her despair. After sharing dinner, they talk afterward, leading to the two embracing and growing closer. The next day, while Sunho and Jojo hold hands, Gulmi corners Hae Young and asks him if he wants to know Jojo's secret. He sticks up for her though, telling Jojo's cousin she did nothing wrong. After dancing for the high school, she confronts Ducko about him filming her dancing, and brutally bemoans his obsession with her. Later that night, a group all joined together to play a game of Truth or Dare. As they all hold out their phones, showing off who likes who, Django and Il-sik uncomfortably keep their phones off before they're teased by the others. This prompts Django to storm out the room, allowing Jojo to chase after her. She asks her former best friend about Il-sik, before admitting to Jojo she was the one who took the photos. As she rushes back to the room, she hallucinates and sees smoke and fire, eventually leading to a panic attack. Embarrassed, she runs away as flashbacks of her painful past flash up in her face. She hurries away, and into Sunho's arms. They decide to get away from the trip, heading to the bay, where they hold each other until sunrise. As they drive back in the morning, a nasty accident befalls them both as they fall off their bike and slide across the road. Drifting in and out of consciousness, it's here where we see Jojo's past, and what happened with her parents. We then jump forward to 1500 days after Love Alarm's official release, and this app has escalated into almost facet of the country's infrastructure. Jojo has completely paid off her debt with her aunt, though but her disdain for the app translates into the opening segment of the show, which now holds more weight given we know who these characters are. Sunho is across the street with Hae Young, who greets him, and the two walk past Kim. It's here we learn Sunho now has another girlfriend, but Hae Young evidently doesn't. However, he does spot Jojo across the street. We then jump back to the past, with Jojo and Sunho out of the hospital. Ducko finds her, and asks whether she regrets ringing his love alarm. He tells her that once you start having feelings for someone, it's hard to turn back. Smiling, he tells her he doesn't want her to be heartbroken like him and walks away, leaving her to her thoughts. However, he does send her an interesting add-on to the love alarm, a shield that blocks any notifications. As we flick between the past and present, we eventually stop on something far more shocking and profound. A mass grave housing multiple dead bodies with their phones on the ground. As the phones ring out the familiar "no one in 10 meters loves you," it appears all of these people died lonely, and believing no one loves them. Love Alarm's latest episode brings up some interesting ideas, especially as the past and future begin to merge together into a more cohesive storyline. If I'm honest, I like this future romance angle, and as the characters have evidently matured, so too do the problems they face in this time. The mass suicide grave is a pretty shocking moment, and along with the ringing world painting that eerily flashes up at the end of the episode, Love Alarm teases glimpses of a darker story at work. Episode 6 returns to the horrific scene of the accident in the future, where we learn there were 23 bodies and no survivors. All of the deceased had their phones gathered, and right now, the cause of death is unknown. Clearly rattled, Sunho talks to his parents about the deaths, but they're indifferent and apathetic to the entire situation. As it turns out, all the deceased committed suicide together, because no one rung their love alarm. With each of the victims between 20 to 30 years old, this comes as a big blow to the credibility of the app, as our characters deliberate over what to do next. Remaining in the future, Gulmi and Jojo continue to dislike one another, this time seeing her wind up Jojo regarding Yukjo, Sunho's new girlfriend. As she hides out at the library, Hae Young arrives to study too, distracting her from her books as she continuously spies on her phone to see if her alarm will go off. Outside, she runs into him with his bike, where he tells her he was waiting for her. This older Hae Young appears to be much more confident than the high school student we saw in the first 4 episodes too. While working another shift at the shop, Gulmi appears, and immediately antagonizes Kim, who bites back, and asks her just why she's so picky, and what man would actually be good enough for her. Leaving her to her thoughts, Jojo heads back to study, where she runs into Hae Young again, offering up his spot as a gentleman, and playing it cool, leaving her to study. She chases after him, though, and it's here he tells her the truth, he's hitting on her the old school way, away from Love Alarm and digital apps. He tells her to think about his offer and walks away. As he heads back home, and tells Sunho he's hitting on Jojo, Sunho tries in vain to hide his feelings. Instead, he visits Kim Jojo, where she turns her app back on and sees the notification that someone loves her. Sunho tells her to stay away from Hae-young, which prompts another flashback as we see Hae-young and Jojo later in the evening checking on Sunho at his house. As she eventually does meet up with Sunho again in the streets and things get emotional, she activates the shield on her phone, preventing any notifications from going off on her crushes. In a strange twist of fate, it turns out Duk-gu is one of the key developers for Love Alarm, the boy who no one loved or cared about except Jojo. Deleting the solitary group photo on his phone, he turns off his computer, sits on the edge of his window, and stares at the city below. With one final glance out at the horizon, he jumps. If there's one thing I didn't expect in Love Alarm, it's an ending quite like this one. Duk-go's suicide is a surprisingly poignant moment and one of the standouts in the entire season. It's so frustrating at times, because Love Alarm has the potential to really double down on its thought-provoking ideas and deliver a darker side to the show, but these elements are never quite explored in enough detail. Still, there's enough here to whet the appetite, and Love Alarm's latest episode is one of the best in the series, even if it does put more emphasis on the romance than some of the dramatic elements. We begin episode 7 of Love Alarm with Jojo breaking up with Sunho. He asks her how her feelings can suddenly change, convinced there's an underlying reason behind this. She tells him not to talk to her though, sending him into a spiral as their relationship comes to an end. As their fight spills over to the canteen, Sunho forces all the students to leave their 10 meters radius while they open the app. Of course, given Jojo has the shield up, his app doesn't blink with a notification. She tells him she doesn't like him and continues to eat as tears sting his eyes. With their relationship all but over, a short montage ensues as we see everything they've been through over the weeks. Sunho is relentless though, chasing after her and telling Jojo he thinks there's still something between them. As she looks emotionless, he calls her heartless and tells her never to turn off her love alarm before walking away. From here we cut back to the future, where Gulnai is determined to join the badge club, stealing 3 million won from Jojo in order to do so. She confronts her aunt, who tells her it's not a problem anymore before hurrying off. Instead, Jojo speaks to her cousin, and she tells her she just wants to meet the developer as he will see her talent and love her. Ironic really, given Duk-go is the one who's the real developer here. As they fight, Gulmi throws Jojo's clothes out the window, prompting our protagonist to head out and pick them up. Hae-young arrives on his bike soon after and embraces Jojo, before she coldly lets him go and begins tidying her stuff up. He tells her that, because she's felt alone for so long, she doesn't even know the difference between being with people or not anymore. As snow falls, Hae-young takes Jojo to a beautiful bridge, the same one he deleted the app on, if I'm not mistaken. He tells her to scream, a way of getting all her stress out completely, and she lets out a heartfelt, emotionally charged plea to her mum, telling her she doesn't want to work, but refuses to crumble, promising the spirits that she won't give up. She turns her attention to Hae-young, after who shouts her name across the river as snow continues to fall. After staring one another down, they head back home, where the snow appears to have stopped as she heads back into the shop. Hae-young thanks her for being alive, and decides to try and do everything he can to make her happy. Smiling, she heads inside and grabs a can of drink, rushing after him and thanking him for a lovely evening. With a newfound purpose, Jojo tells Gulmi how she can pay her back, including watching the store for her while she's back at school. Despite her objections, Jojo's aunt agrees to the terms. Satisfied that she'll be paid back, Jojo heads out and comes across Hae-young again, who tells her he wanted to say goodbye before heading out to Busan, forging a life of his own including a flat and a job. As they talk, Hae-young tells her he didn't ring her love alarm at school to prevent any complications with Sunho. He asks her whether he can ring her love alarm now, but, of course, the shield prevents that from happening. Meanwhile, Sunho asks Yukjo whether they should return to America, especially since he feels bored of everything and has little interest in the upcoming Love Alarm presentation. Back home, Gulmi opens up on camera, admitting she's been scammed out of 3 million and begs for donations. As she pours her heart out, the solitary person watching her donates the money she needs. As the episode ends, Sunho learns that Hae-young is moving out. With Duk-go's suicide all but brushed under the rug, we return to a much more straightforward slice of romance here, as Jojo grows closer to Hae-young. He offers a very different sort of relationship too, with a much more organic feel to it, rather than Sunho's slightly toxic and possessive mannerisms. Still, Jojo is clearly conflicted here, and just where her heart lies remains a mystery. The door is left wide open for the finale to come, though as our characters prepare for one final dose of the finale to Love Alarm begins with Sunho showing up at Jojo's work, only to find it closed. As it turns out, our protagonist appears before Hae-young in the school courtyard. It's here she reveals the truth about Love Alarm, that she had a shield up, and it's her fault their relationship failed. He reassures her, and the two step closer together, prompting her to smile as he rings her alarm. After a somewhat romantic and beautiful date, Jojo heads home only to run into Sunho, who checks her love alarm, only to find the notification go off again. She tells him she used to like him, but right now she's not so sure. Seeing the damage the shield has caused, Jojo tries to turn it off. Only, every time she tries to get rid of the shield it reactivates, seemingly condemning her to life without the love alarm activated correctly. Realizing the developer is the only person who can turn off the app, she contemplates what to do next, while Gulmeet continues to entertain the solitary person watching her streams. Sunho accuses Hae-young of using him to get what he wanted. He tells him it's only a matter of time before he leaves as Sunho turns the attention around to Jojo. The two discuss what she did to him, and he tells his friend that he still likes Jojo. Yukjo shows up midway through their fight and checks out Sunho's yearbook to find out who Kim Jojo actually is. The big day of the Love Alarm launch arrives, and with it the promise of the developer being revealed. Jojo laments the arrival of Love Alarm, realizing it's caused more harm than good, and wonders where they'd be now without it. However, the big talking point here is the reveal of the developer himself. Is Duckgo still alive? However, as protesters arrive to stop the launch, Hae-young learns the artist of the ringing world is actually Jojo. Seeing the protest on TV, Hae-young rushes to the scene to check on his love interest. In the auditorium, the presenter mentions that Love Alarm was created in a shy boy's bedroom. Glimpses of Duckgo's apartment flash up before the developer reveals himself to be a man named Brian Chan. While protesters outside question the morality around the app, inside the building, the Badge Club are told the new features for the app will accurately predict one's feelings and how they will develop. In the aftermath of the meeting, Jojo, Yukjo, Sunho and Hae-young all meet in the hallway, while Jojo contemplates over just who she'll choose. As the quartet deliberate over what to do next, the developer upstairs reveals that the love alarm will accurately predict who you'll fall in love with, where the episode is left hanging in the balance. Love Alarm leaves things hanging on an almighty cliffhanger here, one that sees Jojo torn between two sides. With Hae-young heading off to Busan and Sunho clearly conflicted by her feelings with Jojo, could we see a situation arise where Yukjo and Hae-young get together while Sunho and Jojo rekindle their past flame? It seems unlikely of course, but the triangle itself continues to keep things interesting, right through to this final episode. It may not have been the best drama, and there's plenty of questions left unanswered if Netflix and TVN decide to renew this for a second season. I really hope they do too, as one of my big pet hates is a series left with so many unresolved questions, in the hope of being renewed. I've said it before, but for me the darker elements of the series have been far more interesting than the love triangles, and it's a shame these haven't been explored in more detail across the episodes. The mass suicide attempts, Duckgo's suicide and the depression that appears to stem from this app, are all interesting and very real talking points, but none of them are ever fully explored, feeling more like dramatic pit stops to break up the romance. Still, the finale does set things up nicely for a possible second season, but whether Netflix will greenlight this or not, remains to be